is the book of Leviticus. The name of the actual book of Leviticus. It means and he called. It's very much written with a Levite agenda about how important the Levites, the Kohanim are. Levites being the helpers to the Kohanim, or the high priests of Israel. And it's very much about their rights and their duties and their responsibilities. Those who believe in multiple authorship of the Bible, of the Yahweh Elohibus, the Levitical and the Deuteronomist and the Redactor. Those who believe in that will say this is written by the one who's Levite. That's why it's so Levite-centric. It's about the importance of the Levites, and as a result, even more so the Kohanim. It is about what they are supposed to do. And he called is a double entendre. It means and both the priests or any Jew calls to God, and God is calling to us. And it talks a lot about animal sacrifices. Okay? So I did not copy a lot, because I figured we better have dialogue about a little as opposed to reading a lot. But to give you an example of what it says, I'm just going to read some of the first rooms. If one is offering as a burnt offering from the cattle, he shall offer an unblemished male cattle. He shall bring his entrance to the tent of meeting. He shall lay his hands upon the head of the burnt offering. It shall become so it goes on. Then he'll bring the blood and everything else, and for the fire and the burnt offering. And if one's offering is from a flock, a sheep or goat, and if one's offering is burnt offering, a fowl, and if one brings a meal offering, and if the meal offering is baked in the oven, and if he would bring a peace offering, and he bring a meal offering of the first grain, and God speaks to him that if you sin intentionally, unintentionally from among any of my commandments, then there will be guilt brought upon, the Kohen will sin, bringing guilt upon the people. What's going to happen if he does something wrong? He needs to bring a bull to the entrance, puts his hands on the bull, they separate the fats, they make all these things that are appealing. If the Assembly of Israel make mistakes, well, they only have to not do a bull, they have to do a young bull. A goat, a sin offering of a single goat or many goats, of doves, of turtle doves, etc., etc. And that's just in the first chapter of the book of Leviticus. Which begs one to ask the question, why? Why are we making all these animal sacrifices? Has anyone ever wondered about that? What are we doing animal sacrifices?
To get away from human sacrifice.
Okay. So we gotta have animal sacrifice in order to get away from human sacrifice? What is this, the methadone to the heroin addict? The person's only gonna drink 20 beers instead of 5 shots? Why are we doing this? So I think the question to be asked is it didn't come out as well as I had hoped. How many of you are familiar with the Star Trek movies? The old Star Trek movies. Okay, there's a great movie, one of them, where they go, it's called, I think, Undiscovered Country or something, and they go, and Julia, tell me if I'm wrong on which episode it is, and there's this being that is acting like he's God. Everyone thinks he's God. He's actually an alien who's imprisoned by other aliens in this prison, so he can't get out, but he's all omnipotent, all powerful. And he needs the Starship Enterprise to get out of this and to travel around the world. He's telling them to travel around the universe to make his glory known. And but he's supposed to be God, he's actually trapped in this prison. And as you can see a picture of William Shatner. Is it Undiscovered Country? Was that the one? Captain Kirk raises his hand to him and says, "Excuse me, what does God need with a starship?" Because obviously it was God, he would need to. So excuse me, why does God need an animal sacrifice? Has anyone ever thought about this? I mean, this is a big part of Torah. Why does God need me to kill an animal? Forget about needing me to kill an animal. Why does God need a Kohen to kill the animal for me? A Levite to kill the animal for me? Why do I need to make this incense? It's often mistranslated. It says that it's often we'll say that it's a how do they phrase it? A pleasant odor to the Lord. Where it says often the incense. That's not what it says. What it actually says is reach nihoach, I believe, is the phrase, which means a very fragrant odor. Okay, before the Lord. It doesn't mean it's for God, it just means in front. Why does God need an animal sacrifice? And if it's not, on the other hand, if it's not important, so our Midrash teaches us, Fiona, you're right, that all the other people had sacrifices, and so the people wanted to have a sacrifice just like the other people. And so God, instead of saying you're going to have a human sacrifice or even random animal sacrifice, we're going to put limits on you. And these are what you're supposed to do. And there's Midrash about that. Okay, why is so much devoted to this? And who cares about the Kohanim and the Levites? And what good is it? What do they need a structure for? I mean, what do they need a sacrifice for, right? Has anyone else thought about that? Who else has thought about that? So like everything, we need to look a little deeper. Because the sacrifices, whether they're meal offerings, whether they're animals, which they often are, turtle doves, or whatever they are, no, they're not pigs. Whatever they may be, whatever those animals' sacrifices are, it's very tied in with the job of the Levites and the Kohans. So it makes very quickly, if the Kohanim or the priests, it very quickly, can make it so that they are lording over other people as opposed to serving the people, which is what a Kohen and a Levite's job is. It's to serve them. You're not bringing the sacrifice to me as a Kohen. You're bringing the animal to me so I can serve you and do what needs to be done and do it with intention. Okay? So the first thing we need to understand is what the word sacrifice means. Because can everyone agree that intellectually this seems kind of ridiculous? God doesn't need animal sacrifices. Why are we killing animals and throwing blood all over the place just to make a Kohen happy? And yet it's in here a lot, so there must be something hidden. Can we all see that? Yes, raise your hand if you got that. So the first piece is to look at some of the words. So I have highlighted in blue and in yellow different things to correspond to make it easy so that everyone can see, although the only way I could get on one page was to make it a smaller font than I would have preferred. So if you look at the top, and you see from the right, there's that blue highlighted word. That's the word korban. Korban means sacrifice. Okay? It's translated here as offering, but actually it means sacrifice. It's spelled kuf resh vet nun. It comes from the Hebrew kuf resh vet, the first three letters, which mean karov, which mean to come near. So a sacrifice is to bring us near with God. Sacrifice is a moment of death. Who's ever been around someone when they're dying and they've gone through death? Powerful? Who's ever with someone when they're born? Powerful? Who's ever seen a sunset? Powerful? Are you as conscious of the power of the sunset every day? Or are you more conscious of being around a death or a birth, which becomes more of a, okay, there's something magical. Ideally every moment, but certainly those powerful moments of life and death awaken us. They karov, they draw us near. And so the sacrifice is very, very powerful. How many of you right now are wearing leather? Leather. How many of you are aware that, or conscious, we're all aware of it, that an animal died to make that leather? Maybe when you put it on this morning, you're thinking, wow, you know what? There was a cow. There's not that cow anymore because I'm wearing his leather, his hide. Right? You know, the sheep gives his wool, but the cow, he's committed. Okay? It's like, right? A leather belt, or again, when you put on a leather belt, think about my pants are being held up by something died in order to help my pants to be held up. Better not let them fall down needlessly. Okay? But honestly, how many of you are aware of that? How many of us are aware of that in every moment? We're not, right? But if you were there when the cow was being killed, you would be aware. So years ago, I served for years with an African drummer and an African priest named Ayodele Adeyemi, and And I wanted to, it was a place where I needed to get my own djembe drum, and being the human being that I am, I did not want to go buy one. I wanted to make it the way they had made it for thousands of years, the old way. And so I carved the Ekbate 3 wood, and I carved the inside and the outside. And the skin of a djembe drum is goat skin. Now, let me just be clear. It's not like the goat, you can take the skin and the goat keeps walking along. Okay? And so we go to a ranch, a goat ranch in Rancho Cucamonga, and Io goes in front of them and he speaks before this little herd of goats. He says he wants to sing for Michael in the other world, and one little goat comes out. And that one is ritually slaughtered, and we had a feast with the meat, and the hooves and teeth were used for rattles. We skinned it, dried the skin, and that skin became the skin head on my drum. How conscious do you think I am of that every time I pick up that drum? And that was 30 years ago. Every time. Because I was there, right? I'm not recommending people go do sacrifices. But the point is that there is a truth to when you're in the moment of death, it does make you aware of God. So that's what a korban is. It's to draw us near. But that still doesn't explain. I mean, I need a drum head for my drum because my drum doesn't play without a head, right? If you only have leather for your belt, you need leather for your shoes or your belt so that you don't get bruised feet. So why do we need animal sacrifices for spiritual purposes? It kind of seems like an inherent contradiction. So let's keep looking. Someone please read, "You shall season your every offering." Who wants to read just that sentence? Somebody, go, loudly.
You shall season your every offering of the meal with salt. You shall not omit from your meal offering the salt of your covenant with God. With all your offerings, you must offer salt.
Okay. Salt. And I've highlighted salt in yellow. And if you look up, you will see the yellow highlighted in the Hebrew. You guys all see that?
No.
On the first line, under 213, there's a line.
Our copies are highlighted.
Oh. Oops.
Black and white, that's it.
That's okay. Here's, it doesn't really matter that much, but here's some other colors. Who wants this? But then I won't use yellow and blue anymore. But if you look on the Hebrew, you see this word that's highlighted multiple times, and it's mem, lamed, chet. It's a 3-letter word. It's a different highlighting than the other highlighting under Leviticus 2:13. You guys can see that. Okay, melach. All right. And it's the word for salt. And does anyone know if you play anagrams what those letters also spell?
King.
No. Melech is with a chaf. So mem lamed chet, mem lamed chet, and melech is with chaf. Mem lamed chet spells salt. Can I transpose those letters into anything else? It's a word you all know. Go on, Hamotzi. So what's the prayer in Hamotzi? Go on, John. Lechem. The letters in the words for salt and the word for bread are the same letters. The difference is one begins with a mem, one begins with a lamed. Right? So, was it y'all remember your Hebrew letters all of a sudden, right? My work is done. They remembered your Hebrew letters. You all have a nice day. Okay. So,
Don't B'nai Mitzvah class.
So, I feel like calling David McGarry right now. So, all right, so they're actually the same word with letters transposed. And they were both on the altar of the showbread at the time of the temple, salt and bread. And as a result, where else do you have them? Whenever we do motzi, we have a little salt, right? And we combine the three letters together. But one begins with lamed, one begins with mem, and we dip the bread in the salt. With me? Everyone with me? Every offering, this is repeated throughout this parsha. Excuse me, every offering, guess what it has to have with it? Salt. Salt, doesn't say bread, salt. Must have salt with it on every offering. Let's keep that aside and remember that. Actually, no, let's not. Let's do this right now. So, if you were looking at the words with the lamed, a mem, and a chet, look at the bottom. Lamed stands for lev, which means heart. Mem stands for the brain, moch, brain or mind. And the chet stands for chokmah, which means wisdom. Wisdom is an actual integration of the mind and the heart, brain and the heart, isn't it? If it's just brain, you're an idiot, a very educated idiot, right? If it's just heart, there's no boundaries. Throughout Judaism, in our practice, we have this pairing. A service is composed of keva, which means the structure, and kavanah, which means the intention. So each rabbi, each temple, each movement, whatever it may be, pairs together what prayers work best and what intentions work best. And if you only have keva, if you only have structure, then you have the service that you may have gone to, which is the conservative and orthodox service where they run through the prayers and has absolutely no meaning. If you only have kavanah, then you have, is it even Jewish? It's so airy-fairy, it's not even, where's the structure? There's not even any Jewishness. I once, and I have to admit, I was young and I did not have the patience, and I made an excuse for myself to make myself leave. I was out of town and wanted to still go to Passover Seder when I was out of town, and found one that I got invited to, and these people, before we start the Seder, we all need to go outside. We all went outside. And we stood around the pool, and they said, those of you know we don't have to report Passovers to me. I mean, it's really important. And ideally would like to do it with the community, but I would rather do it alone than this. And so they said, we are all going through the Red Sea, and so we're all going to dance with our tambourines now around the pool. For 15 minutes. And then we sat down to Seder, and I said, look, I don't want to leave in the middle of the Seder, but I need to leave. I just realized the time, and I have to be back where I am, where I was out there for. It was going to be too painful for me. I didn't say it's right or wrong, I'm just saying I did it, okay? Lois is giving me this judging look like, how dare you? I was in my early 20s, cut me some slack. Okay? I didn't have gray hair much at that time. So, if there's too much kavanah, then is it even Jewish, right? So we have to blend those. We have to blend our moach, our mind, and our lev, our heart. Okay, and the Talmud makes a comment, melech, which is with the chaf, not the chet, the melech, and lamech is the two words have a similarity. If you put the mind before the brain, you're a king. If you put the heart before the brain, if you put the brain before the heart, you're a king. If you put the heart before the brain, you're a fool. It actually makes that kind of comment. That's not what's going on here. What this is about, this idea of the mind or the brain, the heart, and wisdom. Wisdom is the integration of both. We need to know when to put our heart first and when to put our mind first, right? Do I want to say yes to my children on everything? Right? Do I want to? What does my heart say? Yes. Would that be a wise thing to do? No. you boys hear that? They're nodding, they disagree. Right? We have to temper. We want them to learn the right values, the right practices, etc. Right? All of you are parents understand that, right? This is, okay? Nor do you want to be so harsh that you are an authoritarian dictator, right? How do you put a balance? Isn't that the journey we all have in life? So, it's not the sacrifice that's so important, because the sacrifice changes depending on the sin, the chet that each person does, according to the book of Vayikra. The offering is different. Maybe it's a bull or a goat or a sheep or a turtle, but what's consistent in every one of them? Salt. The animal changes. The circumstance changes. Salt is the consistency. And it becomes what the Kohen is supposed to be doing, is not leading the people to sacrificing, but the opposite. To lead the people to not need the sacrifice at all. Rather, to help each individual integrate their lev and their moach into chokhmah, their heart and their brain or mind into wisdom. We know from the Midrash, we know that the sacrifice is only because everyone else was doing them and wanted them, and so we wanted one. It's like later on, everyone's got a king, so they say to Samuel, we want a king. Samuel says, God says it's a bad idea. They say, we want a king, we want to be like all the other nations. Okay, so we get King Saul. But the Kohen, the Levite's job, is it to kill the animal? No. We know that's not it, because again, it's only something that does this. And it's not about a pleasing odor. I hate that translation. Reach nichoach is actually a very fragrant odor. There is a difference. By the time when they're burning the incense and fats. So, for the Levites and the Kohanim, it's not about doing something. We all know intellectually, what does God need with an animal sacrifice, right? We all understand that. So why is there all this time? It's not about the sacrifice of the animal. It's about helping the people have the same consciousness in their mind and their heart, so they get a spiritual wisdom that is as deep as when an animal is killed. Did that follow for everyone? You got that look on your face, Mary. So a sunset is extremely beautiful for you. Makes you aware of your relationship with God, right? So you don't need to go be around a death to have that same relationship with God. You can see it in a sunset. Okay? The Kohen and Levite's jobs, in terms of sacrifice, there are other jobs as well, but in terms of sacrifices, is not to say, okay, you're seeing God in a sunset, but you got to come kill a turtle dove. But rather to take this lesson of salt, so that you are experiencing an awakening in your mind and your heart, so you have an integrated wisdom, which doesn't need an animal to die. Right? It doesn't need an animal to die. Remember, Midrash teaches we're all going to be vegetarians one day. Kashrus just until we become vegetarian. So, does that help a little bit? You see, Luba, you play with your cat outside, and you have a divine spiritual experience, right? Well, okay, maybe Misha has it with the cat.
Go outside.
Okay, but you have, whether you'll post a picture of a flower because it so touches your spirit. The job of the Kohen is to help all those experiences. The job of the Levites is to help all of those kind of experiences, a sunset or a flower or a cat. Cat's a tough one for me. Or a cat. I'm sorry, I'm a dog person. I'm a big dog person. I'm not. Yeah, but you see, I'm not that aligned back then. So, your cat or your flower or whatever else, the job of the Levite and the Kohen is not to say, oh, okay, that's great, but now come kill a goat. The job of the Levite is to say, great, you're experiencing the wisdom of integrating your moach and your lev, your brain, your mind, and your heart. We want to do that even more. So you can experience it in a building or in a car or in a traffic jam. do you guys see what's really important here? So it's not the animal sacrifice. And we get lost in all this ritual which is designed to make the animal sacrifice meaningful. And I will tell you, because tell me, has anyone else other than me been at an animal sacrifice? I can tell you it's pretty powerful, it just is. It is, stayed with me my whole life since then, 30 years later. Okay? And every time I pick up that drum, I'm much more conscious that an animal died so I could have my drum than I am when I put on a leather shoes or leather belt. I wish I could say I was as conscious every time I wear leather. You know, we go and we have a great steak. How many like steak? Burgers, hot dogs. I can get them some. Do we think about the fact that the animal died? It's powerful. We get lost in this idea that it's about the animal sacrifices, and what I'm trying to say is it's not. It's about the salt and the lesson that's hidden within the letters of the salt, what it teaches us in terms of how it's, the salt and bread are the same letters. That's what is important on this piece. And so the Kohanim and the Levites' job is not to say, sacrifice more. It's to say, see, experience the wisdom of God in the flower and the sunset in your cat. Do you guys see that now? Does that put a different framework on the issue of sacrifices for everyone? Yes? No, raise your hand if that does at all. Okay. Before this, who else had a problem with this animal sacrifice thing? Thought it was primitive, horrible, sadistic, and I just think the Star Trek quote's the great quote. Why does God need me to kill an animal to know that for me to be in a relationship with God? But it's all about karov, to draw near, which is the Hebrew root of the word korban, meaning sacrifice. Okay, let's go on to Leviticus 3:1 and 2. Would someone please read the first line of English?
If your offering is a sacrifice of well-being, if you offer of the herd, whether a male or a female, you shall bring before one without blemish. Okay,
so it says here, shlomim karbino, so a sacrifice of shlomim, that Hebrew word that is highlighted in gray or yellow, gray or black color. What do you think the root of this word shlomim is? It's not shlomim. What do you think it is? Shalom. So it's not about well-being, it's about wholeness, peace. So if your offering is to be, if I'm trying to draw near by being for an offering of peace, of wholeness, it's not about well-being. Sacrifices, again, using the salt and the bread as an example, but the sacrifices are not meant to give you well-being, they're to help you make you whole. If you're whole, do you still need to sacrifice an animal? No. You can take the lesson of the salt and the bread and not sacrifice the animal, can't you? Right? So again, these are offerings for wholeness. And then what do you have to do? You shall lay a hand upon the head of your offering. This is repeated multiple times. So before you're going to kill the little calf, in your callousness and your inability to experience God in wisdom of a balance of your mind and your heart, and you need an animal in order to have that numinous experience. If that sounded denigrating, it was meant to. So if you need to have the death of the animal, because some people, what are they going to go do? They're going to go do this, then they're going to go out and sin again and kill another animal, right? And again and again and again. If you need to, we're going to make this a personal experience. You're going to lay your hands on this animal and you're going to look it in the eye. That may change your willingness to want to make that sin again, to have to do this animal sacrifice, huh? It's constantly saying, because now it's you know, unless you're sociopathic, that's gonna literally hit you, isn't it? Right? Because then that brings, if it's an offering for wholeness. Someone please read the next one. And I put it here because I don't like the translation. Who wants to read Leviticus 3:6 in English? In English, bottom page. And if your offering is a goat. Go ahead.
And if your offering is a goat, you shall bring it before Adonai,
Keep going.
and lay a hand upon its head. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's sons shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar.
Yeah, that's not really what it says. It says, B'nai Acharon et Damo, and that they will do something with all Damo with this blood on Mizbech, on the altar, and what they're going to do is Saviv. How many of you recognize this word Saviv? Does it mean dash it on the altar, against the sides of the altar? What is Saviv?
Spin.
Very good.
In what?
He pays attention on Hanukkah. Saviv, to spin. Saviv on, so, right? Saviv, to spin. So the idea is that they're spinning it around the altar, so you're not going to miss it at all. But we want you, wherever you're standing, to be aware of that this animal died that you just looked its eyes into. Let's just show you where it is now. Because what we see left of it, yeah, we're going to have some for feast, but what we see left of it is this blood being spun around. Is that going to encourage the person to say, oh wow, that was great, I want to sin again so I can do the sacrifice? Or is that going to make them say, is there another way so I don't need to do the sacrifice? I received an email from someone today. We were talking about, or he was talking about, his one of his problems with Judaism is that this seems primitive and sadistic, and these Kohanim who think they're lords over the people, and this ridiculous practice of animal sacrifice. And he's right. But the goal isn't to be doing the sacrifice, the goal is to stop doing the sacrifice. The goal of the Kohanim and the Levites is actually not to encourage them to do more sacrifices, right? I mean, let's do an example, a juxtaposition. Mr. Levi goes to Roger, and he goes to Rita. And he's got two commandments that are talked about here, or in the Torah, that he's going to try to encourage them to do more. Okay? One is giving charity. So when we go to Roger and try to encourage him to give charity, he gave charity. Okay, give more charity. Okay, he gave more charity. So Rita, you told me that the Kohen's supposed to go say, Rita, kill a goat. Well, now kill another goat. Wasn't that good? Now let's kill a bull. Yay, let's go get a turtle though too. It's not that kind of commandment, is it? The whole purpose of it is so you don't do it anymore. It's not like a commandment that we want you to repeat over and over. The idea is you don't do it. So if the Kohen or the Levi are actually doing their job, they're serving the people by making themselves obsolete when it comes to this. Do you guys see that? Make it so that no one gets asked to do sacrifices. Go ahead, Alice, you were saying?
Well, I'm amazed because this is the first time I've heard a rabbi give what you're saying, an explanation. I never heard, because they would just say, well, you sacrifice the goat, you sacrifice this, and there's no indication that you're trying to do it to encourage people not to want to do it.
That's what we're doing.
I second that. I mean, it's like you've just opened my eyes as to why we read that every single Shabbat. It doesn't make sense to me. Now it makes sense to me.
That's the
No.
And also, but now we cannot do sacrifice because we don't have a temple.
So
So
now
we
we
would
can't
have been,
just-
we would have been maybe better people if we still had the ritual.
maybe, because we've been more ritualized. Maybe. And so we create, when the temple's destroyed, it takes us about 8 centuries to get it down. We create the Siddur and an order of our prayer service, so it becomes a portable homeland and a sacrifice of our heart. But it's very difficult. See, the idea of reading about the sacrifices, when I read about the sacrifices, I have a personal, emotional relationship to it.
Can we do it?
Kill a goat?
No, like have that experience. Yeah.
Do an animal sacrifice?
You'd have to kill a goat.
I'm not doing it.
Like you did it.
You want to go build a drum? I'll introduce you to an African priest who's a friend. Thank God, I was great, but I'm not doing that. I'm not doing
That's
animal
it, that's
sacrifices.
it.
I'm not doing any animal sacrifices. I don't intend to. One and done. It's like my Maj career. For those of you who do not know,
Yes, image.
so I played 2 games of Maj. The first one I Maj, but I didn't count because there were rules that I did not know about. So it didn't count. But so I played my second game, with knowing all the rules, on Thursday night. And I was doing the Rabbi Maj games. And Sherry said that it wasn't right when she was sitting in the other end, and I got Maj and I yelled, Yahtzee. So, anyhow, but yes, one and done. And so I don't need to do more animal sacrifices. I don't want to. I'd rather become more conscious in other ways. But yes, we get the portable home and we make sacrifices of our heart. We read about it because if you really can visualize as you're reading about it, it's pretty awesome. I don't mean that in a good way or a bad way. It's just awe, filled with awe. So the purpose of the sacrifices becomes to not have to do them anymore. The purpose of the Kohanim and Levites is so the Levites ace themselves out of a job of having to do the sacrifices. As opposed to, just give me a sacrifice of a goat, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Go do whatever you want to do. Next week you can give me another goat. Right?
Because that's what it looks like when you read it every week.
Unless you look at it a little deeper. That's for Shlamim, it's for a wholeness. That it is for our, that this whole, look, I look at patterns, and I think that when you see that it doesn't matter what the offering is, you gotta bring salt, that tells you something. There's a whole other level that once you have to bring oil on, and word for oil, and how it corresponds to the tense if you wrote 3 and 7. That's different, that is less conscious. So, all right, now let someone read, please, Leviticus 3:6 in the English. Oh, we just did that, didn't we? Okay. And in this Hebrew, in English, it says if your offering is a goat, az carbono, if you're the thing that's going to bring you near is a goat. In English, it says you shall bring it before Adonai. In Hebrew, it says the hikrivu. Now, there's a reason I was saying things earlier in the service. Oops. If you hear a word that's it'a'eh, yitgadal, yitgadash, right? It is binyan hitpa'el. It is the self-reflexive conjugation, meaning that it takes the verb and it is making it self-reflexive. Right? You guys have heard me say it, and I said it again today a couple different times, right? It wasn't unconscious I was saying it so much. Honest. Yit gadol, the root is gimel daled lamed gadol, which means, who knows in Hebrew what gadol means?
Big.
Big, very good. So yit gadol means he or it has made itself bigger. Kadosh, kuf daled shin, what does that mean? Holy. Yit Kadash means he or it has made itself more holy. And that's what we pray. That means God is making God's self bigger. God is making God's self more holy. Yit Halal. Hey, lamed lamed, halal. Hallel. Yeah, what's Hallel? Hallel? To praise. Yit Halal. He, it praised itself. This is the grammar. Everyone with this? So if we're now looking at this verb in Hebrew, in Leviticus 3:6, we see it is the hikrivo. It's that same sound, I-A, right? So let's look what the root is. It's not the vav, it's not the hey, for those of you who read Hebrew. It is the kuf, it's the resh, it's the vet. Karov. What is that word we've been talking about? What does it mean? No, korban is the sacrifice or offering. What's karov? To draw near, to be close. That's why korban tells us that the offerings are to help us be aware, to be close with God. So in this conjugation, that word literally will mean you are going to make yourself close. You could even say you're going to sacrifice yourself. You're going to make yourself close. So instead of, if your offering is a goat, you shall bring it before God. If your offering is a goat, you shall make yourself close, near, before God. Whole different meaning, isn't it? We are to be doing this to ourselves. God does not need the korban. We are needing it, in theory, so that we can make ourselves more aware, more close, more near. And ideally, we don't need the animal sacrifice to do that. And ideally, the priests, the Kohanim, and the Levites, they should be working themselves out of a job of sacrifice. Shouldn't they? They should be doing other things. The sacrifice isn't so bad if you're Kohen or Levite. You get a cut of the meat, literally. You get a cut, right? You know, you're a big shot. I'm just saying, I'm a Kohen, so who here's a Levite, by the way? Anyone a Levite? Oh, Stan's not here. No one's here to wash my feet. Okay, so are you a Levite?
It's a Kohen.
He's a Kohen. Well, your feet get washed too. We need some Levites around so we can wash our feet. We don't wash each other's feet. It's not that kind of.
Right.
Okay, this is not, you know.
Wait, what do they do with the meat? But
What's
we
it?
sacrifice first and then
What do
with the meat.
gets eat?
Yeah.
Gets eat? First part, yeah, it's good. There's whole descriptions of where it goes and how it's eaten, and what part's burned, and what part's eaten, and what part's given to the Kohanim. Yeah, that's good. But the point is that this whole sacrifice issue is so that it becomes obsolete because we see God in the flowers, in the cat, in the sunset. And our job is that we are to draw ourselves near with the help of the Levites and Kohens so that the sacrifices are no longer needed. And so that we can see the real piece of the sacrifice that's so important, but it's so subtle, the salt. And we can combine our lamed, mem, and chet, our lev, our heart, our moach, our brain, our mind, and our chokmah, our wisdom, so that we have wisdom. Because without both of them integrated, there is no wisdom. Agreed? There's a saying in Pirkei Avot, who is wise? What's the answer, boys? Who is wise? Come on. Ben, you know the answers. You both.
One who learns from others.
One who learns from others, one who learns from everyone. And who is honored? John.
One who honors others.
One who honors others. It's from Pirkei Avot. We need to be wise because we learn from not necessarily one, but from the animals too. I don't need to do another animal sacrifice of doing it. Would I do it if I were doing another drum? Yeah, probably. I might. I don't know that I would, but I might. If only so they could experience what it was. I don't really have any desire to, but how many of you have blown a shofar? Okay. Deer horn fall off. Deer antlers. Shofar horns don't fall off. Okay? Do you realize that? Shofar horns, you have to be a hollow horn, does not fall off. Solid horns fall off every year and they grow back bigger. A shofar, the reason you've seen a lot more of the kudu, the long ones, it's A, they're a lot easier to play, but B, the herds were they were overgrown. There were too many kudu, and so they brought kosher hunters down to Africa to kosher kill those kudus so they could use the horns. You pick up a horn, a shofar, it's an amazingly powerful experience, right? Let's be clear. Not so much for the kudu. Okay, kudu and that's gorgeous shofar, that's beautiful. Yes, for you. The kudu's thinking, I'm not enjoying it so much. Right? We need to be conscious so that we can stop those practices. And the whole purpose of so we have all this book on Leviticus, so many instructions about this sacrifice and that sacrifice. And it doesn't make sense, but now do you see why it doesn't make sense? And now did that help people, did it help you guys understand why it needs to be in there and what's really important, and that it's so that we don't do them anymore? How many of you have given your children, how many of your parents with grown children? Okay, grown isn't over the age of teenage. And how many of you gave your children at one point permission to do something? You let them get away with doing something you knew was stupid and was going to hurt them, so they would learn not to do it. Ben, why are you raising your hands? You're not a father yet, are you? How many of you did something like that? Okay, you gave them an opportunity to do something stupid, so that they would learn. You may have said, okay, here's some money, go invest it however you want. Okay? And they went and spent it on video games, or whatever. They went and invested it on, whatever.
Crypto.
That's a whole other discussion. You're a commodities trader, you have to have a discussion with him about digital currency. But right, for the people who made a lot of money, it wasn't such a bad thing. But the point is, oh no, what's the big thing? AMC, what was it called? What do they call it with the stocks? AMC stock, and the other one that went way up in like 2 days, 200 times. No, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? What's that? What is it? GameStop. Right? Some people made fortunes on that, but like any Ponzi scheme, some people lost a lot. So, but correct. Mike was going, yeah, that's what I bought at 200, went down to 30. But the point is, we often will give our kids an opportunity to do something and let them make a mistake to learn, right?
We don't do it often.
Often is more than once. Your kids were exceptionally bright, they knew immediately.
No.
You just never give them the opportunity.
Yes, that, good.
So, right, but that's something that happens, right? And God's doing it for us too. Okay, made a mistake. So you got to do all this. You're not going to want to make that mistake anymore, are you? But we need to combine your heart and your brain into wisdom. That's the purpose of the sacrifice, yes.
The question, if I may?
Always. No, everyone else can, Roy, but you can't.
So early on in the lesson, I believe you said the Midrash said that eventually we're all going to be
Vegetarian. Correct.
So if his prophecy,
and that's how we are. We do the laws of kosher, right? Curb our animal
but
animals.
in era X, if that actually happens, what do you think would happen to these teachings?
Well, if that actually happened.
If we weren't, if our,
So
our
you never.
generation's tenfold from now.
So let's describe that generation for a moment of that time. You're discussing a time when no one's eating any animals,
Right.
and as a result, the lion and the lamb can lay down next to each other. No one's eating any animals. God forbid they're going to hurt each other, realizing another human being is another human being. Or at least they say namaste. The divinity means recognize the divinity in you. They're going. So now you've got a world where ancient enemies, whether it is a lamb and a lion, or this cultural human being and that cultural human being, have such respect that they are not in conflict anymore. They may still disagree, but they're not in conflict, right? Sounds like a messianic era, doesn't it?
Yes.
Sounds like when the Mashiach comes, may come in our
So
time.
we wouldn't need the animals to sacrifice because we would all be perfect.
Or, well, it would be perfect, but we would not be doing those.
Not
things.
safe.
We would be with Mashiach, we'd have Messiah. And what does that look like? So now you get to whole discussions of what does it look like when Mashiach comes.
Right.
Here's what I can tell you, it doesn't look like what it looked like after Jesus came. How much I can tell you. Someone says, why don't you believe in Jesus as the Messiah? It's like, well, because he didn't, the world kept going on exactly as it was going on. So, but I was having this conversation often with Christian ministers. Messiah's going to come, I'm going to say welcome, they're going to say welcome back, we're all going to accept him. Right? So, You're describing what would be a time of Mashiach, aren't you? Okay. But we can only do one step at a time in our own lives. And we need to do that. Any other comments or questions on this? So was this helpful in terms of putting a different framework on korbanot? Remembering, korban comes from the word karov, meaning to draw near, to come close. Why are you pointing to me?
Joel.
Oh, yes. I thought you were pointing outside, and there was like, which would mean there's someone who shouldn't be there, and my wife.
So with all the rules for ritual sacrifice, and then all the rules for kashrut, take care of the animal, feeding it, are they any way comparable? Like, so that you're so present, you're understanding what you're taking?
Yeah, the rules of kashrut, though, are really pretty simplistic in Torah Sinai, in the written Torah. Eat this, don't eat that.
Right.
When you start getting into how the animal needs to be slaughtered, you start getting more into Torah Shema Peh, into rabbinic law, Talmudic law, about how an animal should be slaughtered. And I think that they may have taken a lot of that Talmudic law from some of this. I don't know, but I think they might have.
It seems like
There's a level of compassion and awareness.
yeah, so you understand what you're like taking, what you're receiving.
I know people who are very observant. They will not eat kosher food in this country. They will not eat kosher meat because all the kosher meat. Dear friend, his answer is, I will not eat basar. I will not eat meat unless it's kosher in Israel, because there they look at the animal before they kill. I go to a butcher that looks at the animal before he kills it. Here, they've lined up all these animals and they and so he won't eat kosher meat in this country. And he's not alone, by the way. There are many ultra-Orthodox that eat it. Okay, so I hope that helped a little bit to understand. And I think that's, and you guys tell me, I believe that's more valuable than just going through the same amount of time and bringing out the Torah and chanting the Torah, as much as I love having the Torah out. Do you guys agree with that? Yes, no?
This is so much more useful in a daily life, like understand and then to go move from here to the next step.
At least I find it. I think it is. So